tight shot of her
A lot
face.
of smoke.
Nice tight shot of her face.
Great.
Try some.
Mm.
Like, here, eat the sweets.
Come on, Francis. Once you do this, you won't ever not want to. Kurt, make her have a little tiny taste. She thinks it's medicine.
I know she does.
Because it comes from a spoon, right? You always think
No.
medicine or something.
That is good. There's no anything.
You got
That's
it
a
now.
lot, Kurt. It's a lot. That's a lot.
Got a napkin.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, quiet.
Bye.
Kurt.
No, but he was, I guess, after doing a ton of stuff with the Pixies, finally wore them one time, and he said, "I'll never go back now," because it's so easier, and he wears them in shows, and
Once you go Frank Black, you never go back.
So anyway, you know, this is for a half-hour special, right? So it's sort of, there's a lot of old stuff and history of the band stuff that you probably talked about a lot before, but it's for this all-inclusive thing. So
Right, well, we offered to contribute some of our old stuff that's going to be in our home video for it, because it would be kind of boring without some really old footage, you know.
that'll, thank you.
Oh, sure.
That'll be great. I know I had pictured using music from Bleach and getting this montage of photos and album.
Right, and that would
stuff
look really
together,
cheesy.
Yeah, so,
Just
yeah,
photos.
That'll be really cool. So I guess starting at the beginning, can you talk about what kind of town Aberdeen is and what it was like growing up there? And
What kind of town is Aberdeen? It's a coastal logging town in Washington State, and it's really secluded, and it's about 200 miles away from Seattle, which is the only really large city in Washington State. And Olympia's about halfway in between those two towns. And Olympia has a little bit of culture, and that I went to that place more than I went to almost any other place during my youth to seek out punk rock and a lot of other types of music, live music.
what was it like growing up there? Just as a kid, was it kind of boring and hard to grow up there because there wasn't much to do, or you probably had to invent your own things to do and to amuse yourself?
Yeah, well, we invented our own amusement. We vandalized, skipped school, smoked pot, smoked cigarettes, and that's about it. Listen to music. The local record store only had top 40 music. The local radio station only played top 40 music. So, I mean, we were pretty much just stuck with whatever was there in Aberdeen, you know.
Do you think that's why, a lot of, aside from, the obvious way Nirvana sounds, you've got a real pop sensibility. Do you think that's where that came from? Or what kind of, was it your mom listening to stuff, or what do you think you heard first that might have had a subconscious
Well, my parents were never music lovers. I don't recall my mom ever really owning any albums besides John Denver's Greatest Hits. Is that the Greatest Hits album where he's going like this with his hand on his hat, like this, going, is that the Greatest Hits album? Or just one of his popular records? I don't know. But that's about it. That and just top 40 radio, Seasons in the Sun, really white bread, white pop music,
Do you think that's what kind of seeped through, or do you hope it was maybe something better than that sort of?
Well, it must have seeped through. It must have had an effect on us. Yeah.
Do you think, if you had lived in the utopian suburban neighborhood and maybe had the typical family and the Cosby Show upbringing, do you think you still would have picked up a guitar and wanted to do what you're doing now?
The utopian neighborhood? If you mean if I lived with Dr. Huxtable? Yeah, probably. I think so. My father one time, a few years ago, he wrote me a letter and he said, I would like, in one way or another, he said, if it wasn't for you know, living in an oppressed town, you know, you wouldn't have had the incentive to really go out and prove something to anyone. And he likes to take credit for that, for bringing me in, you know, bringing me up in a small town. But no, I'm sure I would have looked for punk rock, and it just would have been easier for me, and I would have gotten into it at an earlier age, you know. And I just would have, you know, I mean, I just think there's a breed of people who really honestly like music, and there aren't very many of them, really. You know, and those are the people who usually become musicians, you know. And it doesn't really matter what environment you grow up in, you know. It's just, you know, some environments are more restrictive than others.
You hear it eventually anyway, I guess, yeah. So it was, I guess it was Buzz that you heard for the first time, right? Or was it before that? Had you any exposure to it before?
No, that was about the time. Yeah, he made a compilation tape for me. I was commuting back and forth between Aberdeen and Montesano. I was living in Aberdeen, and I was going to school in Montesano, which is about 30 miles away. And I had Buzz in a couple of classes. I had him in an art class and an electronics class, and I remember just hanging out with him, and just he had a few punk rock magazines, and I would look at them and just like, oh, I was just mesmerized, you know. I was just like, oh God, what would that sound like? And finally one day I convinced him to make me a tape.
So you were a long time wondering about what it would be like before you actually heard it then?
Oh, for years, ever since I was like 12, like that issue of Cream magazine when they were following the Sex Pistols tour, you know, in '78, you know. I remember seeing that picture of Sid Vicious and just going, oh wow, that's real rock and roll. It has to be. Look at the blood on his face, you know.
What were you, I guess, living there and not actually being able to hear it before that? What were you, I mean, I'm sure you had favorite bands before you actually heard that.
Typical stuff, you know. I was probably the first band that I was really into was the Beatles, and then all that top 40 radio. And then after that, when I was about 4th grade, I was living with my father in Montesano. And what was it? He had a record club, you know, one of those Columbia House record clubs, you know. And one of his friends, he was a bachelor. He was a fresh, you know, he'd just recently gotten divorced, and he was a bachelor. So one of his bachelor friends told him to get one of those subscriptions, and he didn't even open them up. He didn't even open up half the records that came, and they were just sitting there, you know, in the plastic still. And one day I opened them all up, and there was some great music, you know. Finally I got to hear Black Sabbath, you know, the harder stuff that they wouldn't have played in Aberdeen or on the radio in Montesano or Aberdeen, you know. So I was just like, you know, instantly a rock and roll fan, you know, a harder rock and roll fan.
Do you think, I mean, thinking back to when you were a kid and every week, what you want to do when you grow up changes. Do you remember what you wanted to do before you got your first guitar?
Yeah. I wanted to be a stunt person. I wanted to be Evel Knievel first. I remember one time I took a piece of metal and taped it to my chest and put a bunch of firecrackers. I taped a bunch of firecrackers on that piece of metal and put my shirt over it and lit myself on fire and jumped off the roof and stuff like that. I would take all the bedding out, put it on the deck, and jump off the roof, take my bike off of it, and stuff like that, you know. But then I hurt myself too much. And then, but at a really early age, I wanted to be a rock and roll star. I wanted to play drums, you know. Ever since I got my first Beatles record, I wanted to play drums in a band. I wanted to have the adoration of John Lennon, but have the anonymity of Ringo Starr, you know. I didn't want to be the front man. I just wanted to be back there, but, you know, be a rock and roll star at the same time.
Well, eventually that happened, though. I mean, are you comfortable with that now, or does that feeling still kind of hold true?
I'd still rather be a rhythm guitar player, yeah, or a drummer, but I just don't have a good rhythm. I'm terrible. I'm a really bad drummer, but I love to play drums. And I was in high school and junior high. No, actually it started in grade school. Whoops. Let me start that over. I was in a grade school band, and I played snare drum for years, and it went up until high school. I never learned how to read music either. I always faked my way through it. I would watch the kid in first chair, you know, I would watch him figure out the piece, and then I would copy him.
Is that so? I mean, but obviously, being a songwriter, though, wouldn't you feel weird about, like, say if you were, I mean, Pete Townsend did sing, but if you were Pete Townsend or someone like that, and you wrote most of the songs your band was doing, and someone else was singing them, wouldn't that be kind of weird?
I don't know. I mean, as long as I got the credit for it. If I wrote a song, I'd like to get the credit for it, but then all you have to do is look on the insert of an album and it says your name on it, you know. But, no, at an early age, for a long time, I really did want to be someone in the background, a rhythm guitar player or a drummer, you know. I didn't want all the limelight, because even if you're not a songwriter, you know, the lead singer always gets everything, you know. They get all the attention and everything, you know. So, and I still to this day would much prefer that, really.
Can you tell us about when you and Chris first met? Is it true it took a while for you to get him involved in doing something? Were you trying to get him to play with you for a while?
Yeah, for a long time. I knew him for at least 3 years before we started playing seriously in a band together. But we had, like, side bands with Buzz and the Melvins, other members of the Melvins and friends of ours in that area. We got together and played in a few bands, like the Stiff Woodies. We'd play at local jock kegs, you know. We'd put Knox gel in our hair, like GBH, and go and play live music at these shows, and I mean at these parties, and it was great, you know. We freaked everybody out. But everyone was so drunk that they didn't care about our appearance. They just wanted live music, you know.
Just go there and try as hard as you could to piss the rednecks off.
Yeah, and get free beer.
Yeah. So...
And condoning drugs, aren't I? Sorry. Smoking. Yeah, we smoked pot. It was so great.
Beer's not dry.
It is too.
I know it
I
is.
remember seeing that in my high school locker gym. Alcohol is a drug too.
But it's one the government can make money off of. So what was it that finally made you? I mean, I guess it was just that Chris didn't want to be in a band, right?
I don't think he ever really had very many aspirations to be in a band, really. He just liked playing guitar. I knew he had a guitar for years. But, Dale Crover, the drummer for the Melvins, and I made a demo in, like, late 85, and, at my aunt's house on a 4-track. And, I had the tape for about a year or so. And I was always trying to push it on my friends, you know, to try to get them into starting a band with me. And one day Chris, after probably hearing it a few times, just decided, hey, this is pretty good, you know. So finally the hint worked, you know.
Was that just, I was asking Chris about this earlier, he wasn't sure. Did you play bass on that as well, or was it just guitar and drums and that was it?
I played a little bit of bass on it,
Yeah.
and Dale played bass on the other parts, on some of the other songs.
That was Fecal Matter, right?
Yeah.
Was that? Yeah. Okay.
That was my band, my imaginary band.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember the first time you played together? Did it click right away, or is it? I mean, I guess just because you had similar tastes in music, it might have. But
I think it clicked in a way where just the fact that we were actually playing music, and I heard these songs with a full band for the first time. It was just so amazing, you know, to actually play. I mean, I'd heard these songs because they were recorded, but all the instruments were dubbed, you know, and to play them live in a room, you know, it was amazing. It was like the most incredible thing I've ever done, and I'd been wanting to do it for years, you know. I mean, I was like 6 years overdue of already having a guitar and wanting to play with other people, but I could never get anything past, like, some guy that plays drums, and he'd bring his drum set over to my house, and I'd start playing this raunchy music, and they'd leave, you know. I could never get anyone to stay more than a day or a few hours.
was he playing him the way you pictured them being played, or did he just add something more to it that you liked even better, or how was it? What was your first reaction to him playing?
To his playing, he basically played the same notes that were on the tape already. We basically just played the songs that were on the tape, on the Fecal Matter tape. So, yeah. I mean, he's added stuff. He's added his own style to the band now since we've started writing songs together. But initially, we were just playing those songs off that tape.
What was the first thing you did together? Was it Hairspray Queen, or did he actually? I mean, it went from beginning with.
Oh, the first song that we wrote together. Yeah. Ooh, God, I don't know.
I think you thought it was Hairspray Queen.
It could have been, yeah. But even at that time, when we first started writing songs, I would come up with the bass lines and everything. I would show everyone what to play because I was still writing songs, on my own time. And but that was probably one of the first songs that I had written at that time, and we started to practice with as a band.
Do you have any memories of the first couple of gigs that you did?
Oh, sure. Well,
Were they parties or?
Oh. Let's see, the very first one. It was a party, I think. Yeah. Well, sometimes, I mean, we considered a gig at, I don't know, if we played together in the house for a couple of hours, and if two people stopped by, we considered that a gig, a show to us. I mean, that was good enough. We had an audience of two people, locals who hated our guts. They thought it was terrible music, But the first official show we actually played was at a party, and it was way out in the woods. I can't even remember what town it was. It was somewhere in between Montesano and Aberdeen, and it was, a typical kegger type of thing, and it was pretty amazing. That was a fun night. It was I think it was Halloween night. We were really drunk, and we had some fake Halloween blood, and we smeared it all over ourselves and played our 7 songs off the tape, and we alienated the entire crowd. The entire party moved into the kitchen and just left the band, just left us there in the front room playing our songs.
Was that Aaron?
Yeah, that was with Aaron Burkhart, yeah.
The first single you did after you went to Sub Pop was a cover. Did you have any concern? Why did that end up being instead of one of your songs?
I really don't know. I really don't have a very good answer for that, other than it was a pop song. It was one of the only palatable songs that we had. At the time we were writing stuff like Hairspray Queen, and we had a lot of, even though there were a little bit of pop element in some of the songs, we thought that people would be able to swallow it easier. We'd get instant attention by that. It was such a catchy song, and it was so repetitive that we thought that, people would listen to it right away and remember it. And also, I think Bruce or John, I think it was John, suggested we record that song too. It was one of their favorite songs that we did.
So you've been doing it regularly at gigs already?
Yeah.
Well, then I guess once people hear that, then they'll pay attention and listen to the other stuff then.
Yeah. I guess that was the idea. I don't know.
So was it Sub Pop's idea to only do 1,000 of them, or was it?
Yeah, it was their idea. It was almost a surprise to us. They might have warned us. They might have told us that this is what they were going to do, but it was kind of a surprise at the time. We were just so thrilled to actually put out a single that it wasn't until after only 1,000 were printed that we started to complain about it. It was like, but there's more people who want to buy this thing. Why not sell more? It just didn't make any sense to us at the time. I understand it now, but still, if you're going to put something out, that's why we were signed to a major label. There should be, everyone should listen to it if they want to,
How long after that did Bleach come out? Was it about 6 or 8 months? Or?
I don't know, honestly. It seemed like 2 years. It just seemed like forever. But, I think it was a bit longer than 8 months. I don't know. I think there are dates on the single, and there's a date on the.
I know it was
on the
year.
album.
I know it was the year following, but it's hard to kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know what months they came out. So, is that looking back on that? Is that I know there was. I can't remember who told me this or where this at the time, but was there some concern? I don't know if it was on the label's part or your part or whose thinking it was that you had these songs that had pop sensibilities to them, but I don't know if it went into the production or whatever it was, but that someone felt like since you were on Sub Pop, it had to sound different from the way you wanted it to sound or something, or someone was concerned about you making a Sub Pop record and something that they could work with, or
Who was concerned with that?
I can't remember the details on it, but was it? Did you feel like you had to make a Sub Pop record for them, or did you absolutely make the record you wanted to make, or was there some sort of feeling that?
Not really. I've always felt that there should have been an album before Bleach, because by the time that we recorded the songs off of Bleach, we were really into that kind of music. I mean, we don't regret it now, but at the time we should have put out the Fecal Matter tape, or at least a lot of the songs that were on Fecal Matter tape. We should have re-recorded them, you know, because that was just a period of our band. That was just part of our progression, you know. We were really into experimental, noisy, like Butthole Surfers kind of music, you know. And there's just, I mean, that's always been the case with us. We always should have put out something a little bit before the last record, you know. But
So a lot of the stuff that ended up on Incesticide, you wish had come out before Bleach? Or?
yeah. Most of the stuff on Incesticide should have come out before Bleach, actually. But also that we did feel a little bit of pressure, a little bit of intimidation by the whole Seattle scene, because everyone was so heavily into this retro 70s thing. And because we were on that label, I mean, there was an element of that there, you know. It was like, I mean, Jonathan had quite a few suggestions from what I can remember, you know. I mean, it wasn't like they demanded it. It wasn't like, you know, what a major label. I mean, I've heard of some really scary major label stories, but there was a little bit of major label attitude going on with Sub Pop at the time, you know. I mean, I remember one time Jonathan suggested I change some lyrics in one of the songs and stuff like that, you know. And that was just kind of weird, because it's supposed to be an independent label, you know. And you know what I mean? I mean, you should be able to do exactly what you want, you know. I mean, but if we weren't so spineless, we would have done it. We would have done exactly what we wanted to do, you know.
So had you wanted to put some of the older songs on Bleach and ended up just doing the new stuff on your own, or was that sort of?
I think at the time.
Did you write new songs for Bleach?
Yeah, we did write new songs for Bleach. There were a lot of songs that were just written within the 2 weeks, or even the last week prior to recording, you know. I mean, at the time, we had a time scheduled for the recording of the album, and at that time we only had maybe 6 songs, you know. And during the week prior to that, we wrote a whole bunch of songs, you know. And we just I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I mean, I guess my question is why the songs that you wrote in those 2 weeks made it on and not the older ones. Was that your decision, or?
Yeah. No, I guess is what I'm trying to say is that we wrote so many songs in that week right before we recorded that we were excited about the new songs, so we wanted to record them. But initially we wanted to just record the few new songs that we had and re-record most of the stuff that was on the Fecal Matter tape, and that would have been the album. You know, it would have been a lot more like Incesticide, but we just happened to write so many new songs, you know, that we just put it on Bleach. And they just happened to have been more in the 70s vein, you know.
Do you have any memories of that tour? Like, I mean, I know I've heard some hell stories of the Mudhoney tour over in Europe and stuff about what was going on. Just equipment breaking down all the time, and 20 of you crammed in a van, no money. Is that pretty much the case for the whole thing in America as well?
Yeah, I can't say it was worse, but it was probably about the same because we chose to tour in the middle of the summer in the South, you know. Imagine being in Texas in July, you know, packed up to the rim of the van with T-shirts and equipment with 4 members, you know, with no air conditioning, you know, tooling around, living off of $30 a day if you're lucky, you know. It was fun, but we should have been a little bit more smart about it, you know. We should have toured in September or something, you know. But we were so excited about getting the record out and going on tour that we just went for it. You know?
Was it any better?
Time for tape change.
Okay. I don't know. It's weird because I produce 120 minutes, but I don't really hear about videos or see them until they're cleared through standards and accepted and everything.
Yeah.
I always wondered if they ever submitted stuff that got rejected or anything like that, or if they just never bothered submitting anything.
I think they did.
Did they?
Yeah.
There's so many. I mean, I'll talk to people
But
like,
it was-
why aren't you playing this video? And I'll go,
Because, well, for the most part, I think it was because it's so low budget, you know. All the other videos they've done have been really, you know, cheap, Super 8.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's a good song. I don't know. I don't sit on the music videos. So oh yeah, with Ted in Europe, was that any better? Or pretty much the same story as when you were in touring the U.S.
Well,
You have a lot of equipment problems and stuff. Chris was telling me you were always like masking, duct taping stuff together
Yeah.
before a show and stuff.
I mean, being in Europe for the first time was more romantic, you know. It wasn't any more comfortable. We were living off of deli trays and, you know, cigarettes and bad beer, or strong beer, I should say. I guess you would call that good beer, wouldn't you? I don't like beer. But, I don't know. It was, there were 11 people in a small European Eurovan. The seats were at this angle. So you would try to sleep, and we'd be on, like, you know, 15 to 18-hour drives like this, just crammed up against one another in the dead of winter, you know. It was fun, you know, but after a while, I mean, after 7 weeks, it took its toll on everyone, you know. So.
Did you not want to talk to those guys for a couple of weeks after that, probably?
Well, I don't think we spoke for months. I don't know. I actually don't remember. I think we may have played a few shows after that, within that year, together. We were always playing shows together.
I guess probably after that winded down is that when Sub Pop started talking to some majors about the distribution deal they were going to do that you guys weren't crazy about being involved with? Was that part of the reason for leaving, or?
It was part of the reason, yeah. I mean, I can't say that we weren't, you know, into the idea of being on a major label. We just didn't like the idea of someone else taking a larger percentage of our payments, you know. I mean, why be on a major label through another company when you can be on one yourself, you know, so.
Was it, I guess then you started pursuing stuff yourself when you met Soundgarden's manager and got a lawyer and stuff. And was that, I mean, knowing that you were going to move on to a major and stuff like that, is that kind of why you and Chris started rethinking Chad being in the band and stuff? Or was it that
No,
way?
not at all. For a long time, we weren't very happy with Chad's drumming, basically. I mean, he has his own unique style, and it's appropriate for a lot of the songs that we wrote, but not for what we really wanted to do at the time. We just wanted to move into more of a pop world, you know, at the time, and his style just didn't fit. Yeah.
Was it hard when you had to go and tell him?
Oh, yeah. It was one of the worst days I've ever had. It was terrible. I hate firing people. It's the worst thing you can do, you know.
I mean, from all accounts that I've heard and read about and stuff, it doesn't seem like he was all that surprised or really. I mean, I guess it seems like he always thought it was maybe imminent that there'd be a parting of ways.
I think he sensed for quite a few months that we weren't totally happy with his drumming. Yeah.
Well, he's been in one or two bands or something like that since then. He's doing something now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in the Red Ants. Something Ants. God, do you know? Shit. It's embarrassing not knowing his other name. So the band name. Something Ants. Fire Ants. Yeah. Yes, Chad is in another band called the Fire Ants.
What do you think happened when Dave joined the band? Did it seem like, I mean, obviously you were a band for a while before that, but did it really seem like, here we are, this is
it.
We can be around for a while like this and make 5 or 6 records.
Right. I mean, Dave added so much more diversity, you know. Not only did he have perfect metronome timing, he hit really hard. He was able to go in between all the dynamics that we wanted to experiment with, and it was just perfect. And plus, he sang backup vocals. So, and I'd wanted that forever, ever since the beginning of the band, you know.
What's always amazed me about him is he's first of all one of the hardest hitters I've ever seen before, but everything he does is so distinct and sharp and clean. And then it seems like you guys get really loud a lot and then break down. And he's also really subtle when he needs to be, and everything he does seems to be right on all the time.
Yeah.
Does he? I mean, I guess the hard part comes from. I mean, he's talked about a lot of the bands that he liked growing up, and it seems like he sort of emanates all those things that he was listening to when he was growing up, which makes him, I guess, the hard hitter that he is, and makes it so.
Yeah, he's really good at copying other drummers' styles. Yeah. I mean, he's got his own original style too, but he also can play a Led Zeppelin solo note for note, you know, perfectly. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference, you know. Yeah, he's a great drummer.
Did you ever feel like anyone from any of the number of drummers you had from Chad and everybody else and Jason, did any of them really ever feel like permanent members, like you might do this for a while with them, or Chad or Aaron, or even Dale?
Well, if we could have, we would have wanted Dale to be a permanent member. But everyone else, we always knew it wasn't quite right. Yeah.
Now, I've heard, with what we talked about before with Bleach, did you feel like with Nevermind you could make the record you wanted to make with songs on it that you wanted to make because you pushed it a little different than Bleach?
Yeah, I mean, Nevermind was definitely an album we wanted to make, you know. I mean, everything about that record is exactly, I mean, we have no regrets, other than maybe the production was too slick. I mean, now that I look back on it, I don't think it's as raw as it could have been, you know. And that's our fault. I can't blame it on anyone else. I can't blame it on Butch Vig, you know. I mean, he recorded the record perfectly. But, it's just, you know, that studios are a really deceiving environment, you know. They just, you don't know what it's going to really sound like until you take it home and it's on a tape and you listen to it over and over again, you know. And at that point, after we attempted to mix Nevermind for like 2 weeks, we were so burnt out on it that we just didn't even care anymore. By the time we got Andy Wallace in, it was just like, oh, yeah, this is fine, you know.
Why was he brought in then? Do you think you just thought about everything too much in the way it sounded, or?
We just, well, we recorded the album, then we immediately started mixing, and we were just burnt out, you know. We just couldn't get it together. I don't have any explanation for it, really. It just didn't sound good. We just couldn't get it right.
What was it like? I mean, I guess when I talked to you guys at Reading a couple of years ago, I think it was like 2 maybe 3 weeks before Nevermind came out. So that was right before all that happened. Do you think what was that like being out there with Sonic Youth? Was that pretty? Because that was your first long tour with Dave, right? You'd been to Europe once before with him, or maybe England. Just
God, I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah, that was the first time we went out with Dave.
what was that like being out with Sonic Youth?
Oh, it was incredible. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know. To be asked to go on tour by a band like Sonic Youth was like a dream come true, you know. I mean, I still can't describe what I felt, you know. It was like, wow, what an honor, you know. It was great. And the momentum and excitement at the time was so great because everyone sensed that the album was going to do pretty well, you know. There was just a feeling in the air, you know. There was just like this new thing happening, and no one could quite pinpoint it, but we knew that we were a part of it, you know. And we just, you know, one of the first shows we played with them was at the Reading Festival, and there had been alternative bands playing the Reading Festival for the last 3 or 4 years, you know. And we didn't know anything about it. We never knew that that thing existed. And to walk out on stage in front of that many people and to realize that many people like this kind of music, it was just like, wow, where have we been, you know? We've been under a rock all these years, you know? But then again, you know, Europe is a bit different than America, too. I mean, it's, you know, America's quite a few years behind.
It seems like they really kind of, I mean, I guess they were fans for a while. You went on for a while before you went on tour with them. It seems like they really took you under their wing and sort of being on a major for the first time, I guess a couple of years after they had done it, they kind of it seems like they might have made it a little bit easier for you with the transition. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, Sonic Youth has helped more bands than any band I can think of, you know. They always know what's hot and new, and, you know, I mean, they just, you know, they're just really great. They're really good about things like that.
Did you feel a little bit better about going to DGC, knowing they had done it, and Dinosaur had done it? And
oh yeah, we just basically do everything the Sonic Youth does. We just steal all their ideas, you know. That's what we're turning into now. I mean, if you saw the show tonight, if you saw that last thing we did, whatever you want to call it, you know, we're turning into a noise guitar prog rock band, you know. I mean, that's the next step for any band, you know. It's like, but they've been doing it for years before anyone else. I mean, honestly, I feel kind of burnt out with the formula that we've been doing, you know. We've been in this band for like 6 years, and playing pop music can get a bit redundant. So I think we all want to start experimenting, and really the only alternative you have is to turn into Sonic Youth, you know.
Such a bad thing.
No, except for that it's been done, but.
You're gonna start getting the 15 guitars with